learners, greetings of the day. Today, we are going to explore some of the most significant cybercrime incidents in history. Attacks that change the way organizations think about cybersecurity. Each case teaches us valuable lessons about vulnerabilities, human error, supply chain weaknesses, and modern attack capabilities. By understanding these real world breaches, you will be able to relate theory to practical and recognize how cybersecurity failures impact the global economy, national security, and everyday's life. So let's start with our first example or case study. First is WannaCry ransom that happened in 2017. WannaCry ransom is one of the most destructive ransom attack in history. It spread within hours across 150 countries using internal blue exploit, a vulnerability in Windows SMB that was leaked from the NSA. What made WannaCry so dangerous was the worm-like behavior. Once it entered the network, it automatically spread without requiring user action. Critical sectors were hit, especially healthcare. The UK's National Health Service had to cancel surgeries and divert ambulances because their systems were blocked. Telecom companies, railways, and banks were also affected. The key lesson that we learned from this is patch management is not optional. Even a single unpatched system can compromise an entire organization. Now let's move towards our second example, NotPetya that happened in 2017. NotPetya initially looked like ransom, but it was actually a viper. Its real objective was to destruct, not ransom. The attack started through an compromised update in an Ukrainian account software, Medoc, making it a classified supply chain attack. From there, it spread globally, affecting companies like FedEx, Marker, resulting in millions of dollars in damage. Systems were permanently destroyed because NotPetya overwrote the master boot records. The lesson that we learned is supply chain is the new battlefield. Even well-protected companies can fall if their vendors were compromised. Let's move towards our third example, Equifax breach that also happened in 2017. The Equifax breach exposed sensitive data of 147 million individuals, names, date of births, social security number, and credit scores. What was the root cause? A single patch-stirred vulnerability that was not patched on time. This breach is a reminder that even one missed patch can have catastrophic consequences. Now, let's move towards our fourth example of this session, SolarWinds attack that happened in 2020. The SolarWinds attack is considered one of the most advanced espionage operations ever discovered. Attacker inserted malicious code into a legitimate SolarWinds Orion update, which was downloaded by US government agency and Fortune 500 companies. Once installed, the malware provided remote backdoor access to sensitive systems. These attacks went undetected for months. Lesson: traditional parameters-based defense is not enough. Zero trust and continuous monitoring are essential. Now, the fifth example of this session, Colonial Pipeline that happened in 2021. This ransom attack shut down the largest fuel pipeline in the United States. What was the cause? A single stolen VPN password with no MFA enabled. Result: fuel shortages, panic buying, and a national emergency. The lesson that we learned from this example, strong authentication is crucial, essential for critical infrastructures. Now, our sixth example, Stuxnet that happened in 2010. Stuxnet is widely considered in the world's first true cyber weapon. It targeted Iranian nuclear centrifugal, causing physical destruction through sabotage the industry system, SCADA. It spread using multiple zero-day exploitations, was extremely sophisticated. Lesson learned. Cyber attacks can now cause real-world physical damage, blurring the line between digital warfare and military operations. Next comes the Yahoo data breach that happened between 2013 to 2014. These were two of the largest breaches in history, affecting nearly 3 billion accounts. The attack stolen password hash and personal data. The most dangerous aspect was delayed disclosures. Yahoo revealed some breaches years later. Lesson: transparency in cybersecurity incident is not optional. It's a legal and ethical responsibility to inform the breach. Now, next comes the Uber breach that happened in 2016. Uber's breach involved credentials stored on GitHub. Attackers accessed riders' and drivers' data. Instead of disclosing the breach, Uber attempted to hide it by paying ransom, resulting in major legal consequences. The major lesson that we learned from this incident: incident disclosure law must be followed strictly. Now comes the Target POS breach that happened in 2013. Target's point of sale system were breached because of HVAC vendors' credentials were stolen. Attackers installed malware on POS terminals and stole millions of credential cards during holiday shopping season. The lesson that we need to learn from this example: third-party access needs strict monitoring. Now comes a very famous Linden breach that happened in 2012. The Linden breach occurred during the SQL injection, a basic web application vulnerability. 165 million passwords were leaked. Lesson: secure code practices are essential and must be continuously enforced. Now comes the Sony picture hack that happened in 2014. This highly political attack involved spears phishing, destructive malware, and public release of confidential emails, films, and employee data. Systems were wiped and operations halted. Lesson: human error through phishing continues to be the most successful attack vector. Now comes the Bangladesh bank heist that happened in 2016. Attackers manipulated the SWIFT system used by international money transfer. They nearly stole 1 billion but successfully withdrew 81 millions. The breach was possible due to weak network segmentation and outdated systems. The lesson that we learned: financial networks requires the highest level of isolation and monitoring. Now moving to our next example, Marriott breach that happened in 2018. Attackers had been inside the Starwood reservation system for nearly 4 years before being detected. 500 million guest records were compromised. The lesson that we learned from this example is during the merger and acquisition, IT security audits must be mandatory. Now, moving to our next example, Log4j vulnerability that happened in 2021. Log4j was the global emergency. A single login library used were from the cloud platform to IoT devices had a critical remote code execution flaw. Attackers exploited it immediately and a massive scale. Lesson: open source components require strict lifecycle management and continuous vulnerability scanning. Now, let's talk about the Facebook Cambridge Analytica that happened in 2018. This incident wasn't a breach but a massive misuse of personal data for political profiling. Through a loophole in Facebook APIs, millions of users' information was harvested without consent. Lesson: privacy governance and ethical data handling are the key pillars of cybersecurity. Now, let's move towards the summary of all these examples that we have studied. Across these 15 case studies, one message is very clear: cybersecurity failure are not just technical issues, they affect economies, national securities, personal safety, and global trust. These incidents teaches us the most important, that patching, authentication monitoring, zero trust, secure coding and vendor risk management. Understanding these real attacks prepares you to think like a defender in the real world. Thank you.